show how that how differences were applied, or how did I apply the rules that I ask you to follow now. So before I ask you to taste the medicine, I've tasted it myself. It has worked. So then let us see how it will work for you. So now let me start by sharing the slide. If just let me know whether it is sharing. Yeah, that's good. Okay, Sandeep, just tell me once it is visible.
Yes, sir.
It is visible. Okay. All right. So this is full screen now, I guess.
No, sir. Right now, nothing full screen.
Screen sharing is paused. Why is it paused? Let me check it. We just had, let me just retry the screen sharing. Maybe that happens. Okay. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, sir.
I'm going for, is it full screen now?
Next to button is for, I think, full screen. For full screen, sir. Next to button, where your cursor is right now. Next to button.
No, I did the full screen, but I don't know why that's full screen. It's shown full screen in my screen, but you can see the screen right now, right? The PowerPoint. Is this not a, why is it showing that the screen sharing is paused? I don't know why. Is it evident now? What can you see?
No,
Can you?
no, we cannot see the full screen. Let me check. IT cell, are you there?
ID cell.
Just a minute. Is the problem at our end?
You can see otherwise the slides, but when I make it full screen, you can't see it, right?
Yes, we can. I mean, it's visible, but not full screen.
I think it's much better, sir.
I'm just trying to adjust, take off the thumbnails and trying to increase the size of the screen. Is it?
Sir, it is visible. We can
So should we continue with this mode itself? If it is okay, fine.
Please continue.
I'll continue with this.
Yes, sir.
So please continue. Meanwhile, we are also checking at our end. Please continue.
Okay. So to start with, now when you look at now, why do we take case studies as one of the methods? So there is, of course, the fallacy of choice of this case is always inbuilt when you start adopting case studies. But having said that, I wanted to start with a classical definition and then get into that. So if you go with J.C. Michel's idea of case study, which he publishes in this very famous paper of the Sociological Review, he says that when you look at case studies, a case study is, after all, a detailed examination of an event or a series of related events which the analyst believes exhibit the operation of some identified general theoretical principle. So now there are three parts here. One, you have to be very smart to choose cases those cases will be made up of different kinds of events which will happen over a period of time. And it is already implicit that when you start analyzing those cases slowly and steadily, we will develop some or the other theoretical principle by the end of the case study. So a case study is chosen either A, to test against a theory, or maybe like in grounded research, theoretical research, you devolve a new theory out of the raw data. So either it's grounded research or it is theoretical research. That's what commonly goes. Now, having said that, how would you choose your cases? So before I get into my example, let's see what other classical writers have done. So sometimes we start choosing a critical case for doing a case study, for example, and that is chosen when this is chosen on the grounds that it will allow a better understanding of the circumstances in which the hypothesis will or will not hold. So we have this amazing, writer known as Professor M.N. Srinivas, the father of Indian sociology. What he does is that he goes to the village of Amakurgs, which is the Kurgs community in Karnataka, and he starts studying a particular village and comes up with the concept of Sanskritization, which basically, people are born into castes, but they do not necessarily stay that way. there is a scheme of social mobility where the lower caste start following the models of the upper caste, and then mobility happens, and then Indian society is not technically a very stagnant society, and that there is scope of change. So in the critical case, what happens is you are taking that case because it allows a better understanding in the circumstance where it will hold or not hold the hypothesis. So here the hypothesis that caste system is rigid does not hold with the particular case that you come in point. It might be that it is an aberration, but after all, it is a case to say that even the sweeping generalization that we make of a certain theory does not stand. In the second case, we go for extreme or unique case studies, and this is mostly done in clinical studies. Psychologists do that. Then there is a representative or typical case. Now, what is a representative or typical case? Now, everywhere people thought that if you have ritual hierarchy, the Brahmins who are up the ladder are the ones who have a lot of hegemony or power within the village, but it is not necessarily so. People who have got numerical strength, or they have got more land resources under their access, which are known as dominant castes. This is a concept come up by Andre Bete, where he does this case study in the village of Rampura, in Shipuram village. He does it, and he comes up with this concept of dominant caste. Now, there is also another case like a revelatory case. What is a revelatory case? Now, there were studies which were talking about the fact that whenever there is a crisis, like for example, say a riot, a community, fight, generally women are raped and they are seen as embodiments or symbols of the particular culture. And that's why women are targeted mostly. But what Veena Das does in her study, when she studies with this beautiful title of the work, Our Work to Cry, Your Work to Listen, when she studies these survivors of the anti-Sikh riots in Delhi, she starts bringing a very interesting dimension that the woman is not only the repository of culture that it is believed to be, it is also that you write a new nation by trying to attack certain communities. So that is a revelatory case. It reveals more than what it was expected to reveal. So then that case study is no more a case study of pain and suffering. It's also a case study about nationalism. And community participation. So that is a revelatory case. Then sometimes the last one is the one which actually all of us generally do, which I also did, known as a longitudinal case. So what we do is we take a certain case and we start finding the opportunity that we will understand this case at two different timings, because we presume, and because or based on our pilot study or based on our initial literature, we presume that there would be different points in time where the case will show some difference. I'll explain that with a more elaborate idea. This idea of the longitudinal case study has mostly been used by people like Michael Borroway, who would say that, so Michael Borroway, he unfortunately, he passed away this year. Michael Borroway takes this interesting method known as the extended case method. Now, what generally happens is that he was studying labor. For example, he was studying labor. Now, what he does is, rather than studying a particular factory and coming and telling us that that case is unique in itself, over a period of time in 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000, if you can see, of course, he was a much more committed researcher than maybe some of us are or would eventually come up as. But what happens is he starts finding connections between what happens to the labor or the worker in different contexts. So he studies South Africa, United States, Russia, and China, and brings out the argument that the common factor in every labor setup is that labor is precarious. There are situations where they're insecure. And of course, the fight and bargaining goes on with the fact that is something common to all laborers. But the social context or the cultural context within which that labor struggle is taking place also influences how you analyze the case or how you get to the case. That is why in South Africa, labor was not a question of only labor, but also it was a question of a racial policy, trying to ensure that certain groups were into certain jobs. In the United States, the entire labor crisis was because of America's transition from industrial setup to service sector. So all of a sudden, your factories start closing down, you shift your industries to the global south, so forth. So hence you say, so how the manufacturing sector, the withdrawal of the manufacturing sector ultimately influences labor struggles. In Russia, it was a political transition from socialism to gradual capitalism, which they started taking. and how that showed on labor relations. And in China, we all know they have wanted to have rapid economic change. They wanted to have, I mean, it's a fancy term now, but they needed to have surgical strikes on their populations. So each population was meant to do something or the other, and that is how they try to manage their policy. So having said that, this case study that I've just tried to pitch here is that case study is important because it tells us that we need to understand three things. One, the choice of event that you want to take. Number two, the choice of context within which the event takes place. And number three, of course, the actors who are scattered or dispersed in different areas. So it is not, and the different areas. So for example, if you say that my case study is a case study of the Aam Aadmi Party, the rise of populism among the Aam Aadmi Party, then it is expected of you that you can change your location from Aam Aadmi Party in Bihar, Aam Aadmi Party in Delhi, so on and so forth. So your multiple sites might be different, but they're wound up into the same case, that is the case study of populism among Aam Aadmi Party. So why I have given this 3 points only on the case study up till now, 3 slides, is because I'm trying to bring in the argument that context is very important when you do narrative analysis eventually, because your narrative analysis is very much in sync or hand in glove with the context that you take. So I think subsequent slides, we'll see how you do a narrative analysis. And then the third part is I'll give you those samples that I've taken, which I've just told. So the case study, just up till now, just keep in mind that when you try to find out unique features, you want to take a case study. Number two, when you take a case study, you are expected to find linkages or roots, the links between the seemingly scattered elements which are there. You have to be intuitive about it. तुम्हें आपको सोचना पड़ता है कि exactly where can we find the links, whether this what is happening is something very discrete or not, whether that is linked to somewhere else, so on and so forth. Now let's get into the narrative analysis part. Now, when we talk about narrative analysis, what do we exactly mean by narrative analysis? Simply, it is the analysis of narratives. So narratives are when people are asked to tell about themselves or about the problem that we study, most importantly, in a free-wheeling conversation. Now, that's very important. And that is the catch of narratives. And that is both the challenge and opportunity as well. Because when a person starts giving a narrative, or he or she is permitted to have a free-flowing conversation, we as researchers have got 3 important duties in mind, apart from the first one, which I've already told. That is, number 1, is that we have to be very attentive about our choice of respondents with whom we want to take the narrative. Second is that the ethical factor has to be taken care of. That is, before you go for the narrative, you must, and that's a must, either take verbal consent or written consent. Generally, we do not get written consent because people in our part of the world, or most developing countries, are skeptic about giving you written consent about what they are talking. And many a times they give you verbal consent. Of course,